In 1944, a German submarine vanished without a trace. 50 men on board, and then silence. For decades, families begged for answers, but the sea kept its secret. Then in 2005, divers searching the waters off Genoa stumbled on something chilling. A steel coffin, perfectly preserved, its bow raised as if gasping for air. Inside lay a secret so haunting, even hardened naval historians were shaken to their core. What happened to U-455? And why did it take 60 years to find out? Alright, so let's set the scene here. It's April 6, 1944. The Mediterranean is a war zone, and German U-boats are getting absolutely hammered by Allied forces. But U-455, under the command of Hans-Heinrich Giesler, gets orders that nobody wants to hear. Break through the Strait of Gibraltar and enter the Mediterranean. Now here's the thing. This wasn't just dangerous, it was basically a death sentence. The Allies had turned the Mediterranean into their personal hunting ground. Radar, sonar, depth charges, you name it. But orders are orders, right? So U-455 slips out of La Pallice, France, with 50 souls on board. Young guys, most of them barely out of their teens, they wave goodbye to the docks, probably thinking they'll see home again. Spoiler alert, they won't. The submarine makes it through the strait somehow. Command gets a few radio transmissions, routine stuff, position reports, weather updates. Then, on April 28, 1944, complete radio silence. Not a single word. It's like the ocean just swallowed them whole. Back in Germany, families are waiting, mothers checking the mail every day, wives listening to the radio for news. But weeks turn into months, months turn into years, and still nothing. The Kriegsmarine officially lists U-455 as missing, presumed lost. That's it. No ceremony, no closure, just a cold bureaucratic stamp on 50 lives. Okay, let's talk about what life was actually like on these U-boats, because the propaganda sure didn't tell the whole story. The Nazis called them the gray wolves of the sea, made them sound like these fearless ocean predators. But the reality? Man, it was a nightmare. Picture this. You're crammed into a steel tube that's barely wider than a school bus, with 49 other guys. The air is thick with diesel fumes, sweat, and fear. There's condensation dripping from the ceiling constantly. Your bunk is maybe 6 feet long if you're lucky, and you're sharing it with another crew member in shifts. The smell alone would drive you crazy. It's unwashed bodies, rotting food, oil, and the metallic stench of fear. Yeah, fear has a smell, and these guys lived with it every single day. Because you know what? The ocean wanted to kill you, and so did everyone else up there. And here's what really gets me. Most of these crew members were just kids, 18, 19 years old. They joined up thinking they'd be heroes, but instead they're trapped in this underwater coffin, playing the world's deadliest game of hide and seek. One mistake, one unlucky depth charge, and it's game over for everyone. The survival rate for U-boat crews was absolutely brutal. By 1944, about 75% of all German submarines never made it home. So yeah, when U-455 got those orders to enter the Mediterranean, everybody knew what that probably meant. So here's where things get really intense. The Mediterranean in 1944 wasn't just hostile territory. It was basically enemy headquarters. The Allies controlled everything: the air, the surface. They had some of the most advanced submarine detection technology of the war. Getting through Gibraltar was like threading a needle while blindfolded. The strait is only 8 miles wide at its narrowest point, and the Allies had it locked down tight. Radar stations, patrol boats, aircraft, mines, you name it. Plus, the water there has these crazy currents that could push a submarine right into British guns. But somehow, U-455 made it through. Command must have been shocked when they got confirmation that Giesler and his crew had actually pulled it off. For a brief moment, there was hope. Maybe this crazy mission might actually work. The submarine's job was to disrupt Allied supply lines and support German forces in Italy. Pretty standard stuff, except nothing about operating in the Mediterranean was standard anymore. Every day you stayed alive was borrowed time, and then silence. The last transmission from U-455 came on April 28th, just routine position data, nothing dramatic. No distress signal, no SOS, no indication that anything was wrong. They just vanished. Like the sea had opened up and swallowed them without a trace. For the families back home, this was torture. At least if there had been a distress call or an enemy report claiming a kill, they'd have some kind of closure. But this was just emptiness. Alright, so now we jump ahead 60 years. 60 years of families wondering, historians speculating, and the ocean keeping its secrets. The war ends, Germany rebuilds, the Cold War comes and goes, but U-455, still missing. Over the decades, there were theories, of course. Maybe they hit a mine. Maybe Allied aircraft caught them on the surface. Maybe they had a mechanical failure and couldn't surface. But without evidence, that's all they were, theories. The families never stopped hoping, though. In the 1970s and 80s, some relatives tried to get the German government to search for the wreck. But you know what? The Mediterranean is huge. And finding one submarine from World War II is like finding a needle in a haystack. The technology just wasn't there yet. Meanwhile, the ocean was quietly preserving one of its darkest secrets. Deep beneath the waves in the cold, dark waters off the Italian coast, U-455 was waiting. Perfectly preserved, like a time capsule from humanity's darkest chapter. And that's the thing about the ocean. It doesn't care about human timelines or grief or closure. It just keeps its secrets until someone gets lucky enough, or unlucky enough, to find them. Now here's where our story takes a turn. It's 2005, and commercial diving technology has come a long way. Deep-sea exploration isn't just for military operations anymore. Private companies are mapping the ocean floor, looking for wrecks, doing research. A team of Italian divers is working off the coast near Genoa, when their sonar picks up something unusual. It's big, metallic, and sitting at about 400 feet down. Could be anything, right? Old cargo ship? Maybe some industrial debris? But the shape on their screens, it looks familiar. So they gear up and make the descent. Now 400 feet underwater is serious business. The pressure down there would crush you in seconds without proper equipment. It's cold, it's dark, and you're running on limited air. Not exactly a casual afternoon dive. But as they descend through the black water, their lights start to pick up something incredible. The outline of a submarine, sitting upright on the ocean floor, like it just decided to park there for a while. But here's what's really wild. This thing is in perfect condition. No massive hull breaches, no obvious battle damage. Just a German U-boat sitting quietly on the seafloor like it's been waiting for visitors. The divers circle around, documenting everything with their cameras. And that's when they notice the bow is tilted upward at an odd angle, almost like the submarine was trying to surface when it died. Like it was gasping for air. Okay, so here's where this story gets really haunting. The divers realize they're looking at U-455, but the submarine is completely sealed. The hatches are closed, the hull is intact. Which means if the crew didn't escape, they're still inside. Think about that for a second. 50 men trapped inside a steel tube at the bottom of the ocean for 60 years. It's like finding a tomb that nobody was supposed to find. You've got German naval historians, Italian maritime police, families of the crew members who have been waiting their whole lives for answers. Everybody wants to know what happened down there. But here's the thing. Investigating a submarine wreck isn't like exploring some old cargo ship. This is essentially a war grave. Those 50 men inside are still serving their watch. In a way, the decision to disturb the site wasn't taken lightly. When they finally sent down remote underwater vehicles to examine the submarine more closely, what they found was both fascinating and heartbreaking. Personal effects perfectly preserved by the cold, dark water, equipment still in place, and somewhere inside that steel hull, the remains of 50 young men who never made it home. The Mediterranean had kept its secret for 60 years, but now the truth was finally coming to light. So what actually happened to U-455? Well, that's where things get complicated. Because honestly, we still don't know for sure. The evidence is limited, and 60 years underwater doesn't make forensic investigation any easier. Here's what we do know. There's no obvious external damage that would indicate a direct hit from enemy fire. The hull isn't blown apart like you'd expect from a depth charge or torpedo attack. So it probably wasn't a dramatic battle. One theory is that they hit a mine. The Mediterranean was absolutely littered with mines during the war, both Allied and German. A mine explosion could have damaged the submarine without leaving obvious external signs. Maybe knocked out the electrical systems or damaged the ballast tanks. Another possibility is mechanical failure. These submarines were incredibly complex machines operating under extreme conditions. A critical system failure at depth could have left them unable to surface. Imagine the horror of that situation, realizing you're trapped on the bottom with no way up. But here's what really haunts me about this whole thing. The position of the submarine suggests they were trying to surface when they died. The bow pointing upward, like they were making a desperate attempt to reach the air. Were they conscious when it happened? Did they know they were going to die? We'll probably never know for sure. The ocean doesn't give up its secrets easily, and some mysteries are meant to stay mysteries. You know what gets me most about this story? It's not just about war or technology or historical mysteries. It's about 50 young men who left home one morning and never came back. 50 families who spent their entire lives wondering what happened to their sons, their husbands, their brothers. The discovery of U-455 brought closure to some of those families, but it also opened old wounds. Suddenly, a tragedy that had been abstract for 60 years became very real again. These weren't just names in a naval record anymore. These were real people, with real stories, lying at the bottom of the Mediterranean. The German and Italian governments eventually declared the wreck site a war grave, which means it's protected. No salvage operations, no treasure hunting, just respect for the dead. And honestly, that feels right. Some places should be left alone. For the 50 men of U-455, the Mediterranean became their tomb, and for us, their silence remains one of the ocean's most chilling mysteries. They went down fighting a war that was already lost, carrying out orders from a regime that would collapse within a year. But they were still somebody's sons. The ocean kept their secret for 60 years, and now we know where they rest. Sometimes that's all the closure we get. Sometimes that has to be enough. But their story reminds us that every historical statistic represents a human life, a family's grief, and dreams that will never be fulfilled. The gray wolves of the sea have finally come home. If this story moved you, hit that like button and share it with others. Let me know in the comments. What do you think really happened to you for 55? Subscribe to Truth Chapter for more hidden stories from history's darkest chapters. Because sometimes, the most important stories are the ones the ocean tries to keep secret. Thanks for watching, and remember, history isn't just dates and numbers. It's real people, real families, and real mysteries that still echo through time.